for you to elect a chair from among your number. The law relating to the chairing of this committee means that the chair has to be selected from one of the members of the committee who is a member of a political group that is not represented on cabinet. So for this council, that means that the only members of the committee council. So can I ask if there is a nomination for chair of the committee, please?
Yeah. Gary, we missed your last bit, and I think you were saying that they have to be Labour and Plaid Cymru.
Yeah, I'll switch. I'll switch my camera off just in case that makes a difference. Yes, that's right. The chair of the committee has to come from either the Labour group or the Plaid Cymru group. So, bearing that in mind, if I could have a nomination, please.
Yeah. Can I just say I'd like to propose Barry Mellor from our Labour group.
Do we have a seconder for that?
Seconded.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have a nomination? Okay, well, on the basis that Councillor Mellor has been proposed and seconded and there's no other nomination, there's no need for a formal vote as such, but are members happy to proceed on that basis?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, then that's the end of. I shall retreat into the shadows now and hand over to Councillor Barry Mellor. Congratulations, Councillor Mellor, you're chair of the committee for the coming year, and you're now back in control of the meeting.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, members. I think this will be a short year. I think it's only 10 months, as you know, we've got the elections coming up in May. The next thing to do is appoint a vice chair, which is agenda item number 3. So, do we have any nominations for vice chair, please? Good.
Martin Holland.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Paul. Martin Holland can put forward. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ellie. Do we have any other nominations? No. Are we all happy for Martin to carry on as vice chair? Okay. Welcome, Martin, again to the vice chair.
Thank you, Chairman. I must admit it's one of the vice chairs that is quite a comfortable position to be in because your attendance is excellent. So thank you very much for your vote of confidence, guys. Cheers.
Thank you, Martin. Just moving back to agenda item number 1 then, apologies. We have had apologies from Joe Wells, who will be attending the meeting but can't get here until 10:30, and from Tony Thomas is in my mind. Tony Flynn, sorry. He's had to go to hospital with his wife this morning, and Tony will get to us as soon as he can. Do we have any other apologies? No. Well, just before we go to declarations of interest, I'd like to welcome 2 new members to this committee, Councillor Ellie Chard and Councillor Rhys Thomas. Councillor Ellie Chard has come on to replace Alan James, who has now become the chair of this county council. So Alan is not able to sit on this committee. So welcome, Ellie. And Rhys is come in place of Mabon Apgwimva, who, as you know, has taken up his assembly seat. So Rhys is taking Mabon's position, and I'm sure you'll both do well in taking over from 2 good people, actually, who served the committee very well. And we have had a pre-meeting this morning, and I think we're going to sort out some form of training for you both. And I know Audit Wales are particularly keen on that to try and bring you up to speed. So welcome, and we'll sort that out for you. Okay then, members. Moving on then to agenda item number 4 is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest with the business that we're dealing with today? No, thank you. Agenda item number 5 is urgent matters. Notice of items which, in the opinion of the chair, should be considered at the meeting as a matter of urgency pursuant to section 100(b)(4) of the Local Government Act 1972. I have not been informed of any urgent matters. No.
There are no urgent matters, Chair.
Thank you, Gary. Moving on then, members, to item number 6, which is the minutes, which are on pages 7 to 16. If we just go through pages first of all and come back for any matters arising. So we've got pages 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Is there any matters arising with those minutes, members? I don't see any hands, no. Could I have a proposer then for those minutes as a correct reflection of the meeting? Thank you, Martin. And the seconder is Tony. Tony Flynn, yeah. Nice to see you, Tony. And you've got to the meeting. I know you said you were going to be late, so nice to see you. You've got here. You're on mute, Tony. You're still on mute, Tony.
Yeah, can you get that?
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I further give apologies because there was a little bit more involved. So in a couple of hours, I'm going to have to go back to the hospital. So I'll, hopefully I'll be here for at least a couple of hours, but then, I might have to sort of go and come back again. So I do apologize for the inconvenience.
Well, wish your wife all the best, Tony.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you. Moving on then to agenda item number 7 is the RIPA inspection, pages 17 to 22. And I think Lisa's with us. Lisa Jones, Secretary
Hello.
Report. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm just going to turn my camera off, if that's okay. Yes, the council was subject of a remote inspection by the Investigatory Powers Commissioner. Used to be called the Office of Surveillance Commissioners the last time we were inspected, and they carry out a 3-year cycle of inspections of local authorities. We had the same inspector as last time, who's Graham Wright, who's an ex-police officer, a senior police officer, and at similar to last time, he seems to take a very practical, pragmatic sort of approach to the inspection, which took place. The protocol now seems to be that they carry out a desktop exercise and a remote sort of inspection, and in the event that anything untoward is found, they would then carry out a physical inspection. So you will have seen on the contents of the report that a physical inspection did not prove necessary. It's as always, really, it's been a useful exercise for us from a compliance perspective as he scrutinises our covert surveillance policy and also our training materials, our central record of authorisations. He interviews key staff and so on, and it's always worth an exercise that's worth doing with him. The action plan that we put forward from the last inspection, he was happy that we'd completed those actions. So and that's recorded there in the report, which you'll have seen. So, like local authorities up and down the country, we've had no RIPA applications over this last 3-year period. That's not unusual at all, because local authorities and many public bodies have alternative means of gathering evidence in the event of a potential criminal investigation and possible prosecution. So there's other ways, such as data matching and so on, that public bodies use, and we're actually obliged to use those procedures before going down the RIPA route, because RIPA is a process of last resort. One of the key things, though, of course, is from a compliance perspective, it's all very well having a policy in place that's fit for purpose. It's awareness of that policy and procedures document and what you can and can't do until you've got a lawful authorization in place. That's really important. So that's why the training is vital, and it's something that is always picked up on at each inspection. As I said, the inspector's seen our training materials, he's commented on them, he's happy with them. So we're tweaking them slightly for training that we've got scheduled in the autumn. So it's all been worthwhile. So as per the recommendations, we are delivering an event in September, which will be a combined event this time for investigating officers and authorising officers. We have delivered this separately before today, separate sessions for each, but this time we're going to combine it. There's also reference in the report to you were picked up to social services, children's services in particular, and risks really of inadvertently straying into RIPA territory in the event of a social worker, for example, using social media or Facebook or something in order to check on families, particularly those that are going through the child protection system, just to see whether they're engaging in personal relationships that could potentially place a child at risk. Now, the position in Denbighshire is that that's not permitted, and I met with following the inspection, I also met with the interim head of children's services, and I've shared a copy of the report with her. And it's absolutely clear that the diktat from the top is, that this is not conduct that will be permitted. So what we're going to do as well is we're going to legal services are going to attend their management team in order to refresh that protocol that's not permitted to use social media in order to effectively spy on families. What children's services do is that they work in a transparent fashion and they work in partnership with families rather than in any covert way. As I understand it, some councils may operate in this way, and this is possibly why the inspectors picked this up, but it's certainly not something that we do in Denbighshire. So it's in respect of us, it was more of a general observation, but obviously I've had to take that back to the interim head and share the report with her. The other point to make is the reference to data within the report. This is referring to the council in its retention of data beyond when it may need it, when it's gathered evidence from an investigation, and ensuring that the product of that investigation is, if it's not required, that it's deleted within statutory timeframes. So there is a RIPA working group, and we have met, and we are working with ICT in order to work out a way in which we can have a central record of this type of information, so that we can apply the statutory timeframes accordingly. The council does have a retention policy that's fit for purpose and that is in place in any event, but it's things such as email records that may not have been destroyed, for example, which we need to capture. So that's an ongoing piece of work that we're doing, that as well as the training, obviously. So it's a positive report. I don't really want to go on any further. Gary's the Senior Responsible Officer for RIPA, and I'm the RIPA coordinator. And I think we're content that house is generally in good order here, and obviously happy to take any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Members, is there any questions on the report? Martin, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, the last 12 months or so have been a very different world for us all. And I think because most of the retail trade have not been open, I'm assuming that we've not done any trial runs for selling alcohol and things like that to juveniles. But I've just got a couple of other questions on this issue. Who sits on the RIPA working group? Just as a matter of interest, as corporate governance, it'd be good to know who was on that committee.
Yeah, it's a mixture. Sorry, Martin.
No, you carry on. You answer that one, and then I've got 3 more yet.
Okay. The RIPA working group, it's been in place, well, since I started at the council, actually. I set up the working group, and it's middle managers, a couple of operational officers who would have been actually carrying out investigations, such as environmental officers in respect of fly tipping and so on. Head of Gary Williams, obviously Senior Responsible Officer, and we've recently merged with Emmeline's service from the CCTV perspective as well. So and there's a couple of legal officers. Yeah, so it's when it's well attended, it's usually a very productive meeting. And from that meeting, we then go away and we craft the materials based on what we hear, the training materials based on what we hear their requirements are.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you? Yes, you can still hear me. Well, at our last corporate governance meeting, we talked about housing, and we talked about cuckooing, and this is where these drug gangs put somebody in somebody's home, normally a vulnerable person. Can I ask, do we get involved in monitoring that, or is that a police issue?
That's a police issue. At previous authority that I worked for, we have carried out joint RIPA applications. It's not unusual for us to join forces with regards to other intelligence agencies, but it's not something certainly not something that we've taken on board in the last few years. No, but ordinarily it would be the police who are avid users of the RIPA legislation. Obviously, anyone who's watched Line of Duty will be aware of that.
I think I must have been one of the only people in the country who actually didn't watch that, I must admit.
Okay.
I'll put my hand up and say that I didn't watch it, but there you go.
Okay.
I shall watch it when it's repeated again and again and again, which I have no doubt it will be. Just another quick question. Later on in today's agenda, we have the internal audit report. And one of the issues that is in that report is the actual amount of money that we've had to chase in relation to people claiming single person residency. Do we again get involved in any sort of monitoring there that would come under RIPA here? I'm not sure whether it's a question for you or perhaps for housing as to how we identify these people who are actually claiming, the single person council tax rate when other people are living in the property.
We have carried out in the past, we're talking 8, 9, 10 years ago now, RIPA activity in respect of living together is what we refer it to. That's not something that's happened in recent years because of the data matching capabilities of the tax office, DWP, council, revs and bends and so on. We've got information sharing protocols in place which we're signatories to, whereby we will carry out data matching exercises. So the necessity for us to actually go down it's an intrusive route to engage the RIPA process. You're interfering with somebody's right to privacy and their human rights. So that would be the last resort. So in the event of data matching exercises not producing anything, and there's still intelligence there that suggests that there's fraudulent activity, then and only then would we consider making the application, which that would be the last.
Have we lost Lisa?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. I think somebody else was in the background somewhere then. But sorry about that, Lisa. We thought we lost you.
That's okay. Did you capture that last bit?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
So it is the last resort, but certainly potentially that is within our powers. But we've not, the services have not felt the need that to actually go down that route.
Okay, that's grand. Thank you for clarifying that. And the final one, which I think I probably know myself, but planning inspections for illegal developments. I'm assuming that's not covered by RIPA. That's just something that we would do in normal practice. If we get report that something has been built illegally, we would send out an officer to have a look. That's
right. And you wouldn't need covert. You wouldn't do that covertly. You do that overtly.
Yes.
And we have rights. If we suspect there's a breach of planning, we have rights to enter land in respect of that. So yes, it is potentially a criminal offence, isn't it? But again, if you're able to, it's quite visible if a development's taking place. You don't need to actually go there in a clandestine fashion. So
in some of our rural areas, they are well hidden, I tell you. Okay, Lisa, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Hey, Martin. Thank you, Lisa. Rhys, you had your hand up.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Showing that I'm in my first meeting, can you just tell me what RIPA stands for?
Sure. It's the legislation, and it's Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I don't think I'd have got there on my own. Thank you. I've written that down. I did have a couple of questions for you, Lisa. They were concentrated on paragraph 4.7. And I was going to ask you about this awareness training that was to be delivered to the management team of Children's Services. Could I just ask a question about that, please? As the member's representative on the fostering panel, I obviously have a few questions about that. We have corporate responsibility for a large number of young people, many of whom may be vulnerable young people, and some of them may be very active on social media. What would be the protocol if there were reports made to Children's Services about activity taking place on social media involving our vulnerable young people? Where would the line be drawn that Children's Services could then investigate a report made about matters that had arisen on social media? Would they be allowed to do that?
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay. The department would work with the police if there were concerns regarding any criminal activity or grooming, or if that's possibly what you're alluding to.
It could be.
Potentially, yeah. So that doesn't necessarily mean there's immediately going to be a criminal act taking place, and it's impossible sort of to give you a generic answer. Really, context is everything, isn't it? But the situation is, if information is communicated to the council, then we've not carried out that surveillance ourselves. We would obviously take that that communication very seriously, and local safeguarding procedures would then kick in, and contact would be made, and potentially an investigatory multi-agency meeting would take place, so that it would be business as usual. We wouldn't, there would be no necessity for the council to engage its powers under RIPA. Whether the police would or not is a matter for them, and they may engage their powers under RIPA, and we would cooperate, of course.
Okay, that's a good answer. Thank you very much indeed for that. And obviously, every case would be handled according to what the situation was at the time by Children's Services. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rhys. Thank you, Lisa. Any more questions, members, before we move on? No. Okay, if we can move to the recommendation. And the recommendation are that the committee receives and acknowledges the report and provides comments on the recommendations contained therein. Are you happy that we've done that, members? Thank you. Moving on then, members, to agenda item number 8, which is Annual Performance Review 2020, pages 23 to 150. This is a report authored by Nicola Neal and Yolo McGregor. And as you see, well, as you know, this is a brand new report. So is it Nicola that's taking it?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Nicola.
I'll introduce and then I'll hand over to Yolo, who's actually coordinated a lot of the work. And normally Councillor Thompson Hill would be with us today, but he's had to go to a pension meeting and present there. So it's just Yolo and I today. So thank you. Okay, so what you've got before you is the annual performance review, which is produced annually by the team, and its purpose is to provide an overview of progress against key statutory functions. The functions that are covered by the annual performance review include the current local government measure, the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, and also the Equality Act. So it's quite a large document, but it's satisfying a number of pieces of legislation, which we've streamlined into one report. As well as reviewing performance and progress against objectives, the report also sets out intentions and priorities for the forthcoming year, and that's a requirement of the local government measure. However, that local government measure is soon to be repealed due to implementation of the Local Government and Elections Act, which was implemented earlier this year. And that makes provision for performance management and monitoring as well. Ordinarily, these annual performance reviews are tabled at performance scrutiny, cabinet, and then ratified by council. But under the new Act, there's a mandatory provision for us to produce a self-assessment, and for that self-assessment to have oversight from the Governance and Audit Committee. So with that in mind, what we've, although we don't actually need to produce that self-assessment until this time next year, we wanted to pilot it with you. So what we've done is we've done a lot of work with the Welsh local government, the WLGA. We've worked with somebody who's been commissioned by them to support local authorities in developing the self-assessments, and we wanted to table with you the draft version that we've got and talk to you about the content of that self-assessment, its focus, how it meets the statutory obligations under the Local Government and Elections Act, and also how we will work with you and how we will report on the content of that self-assessment in the future. So I'm going to hand over to Yolo now to talk to you about the content and how we'll work with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nicola. Do please say if I start to turn into a Dalek or any static starts coming across. D-Valley broadband is not what it should be. So the report, you'll remember that I came to the committee with Gary back in January to brief members on the Local Government and Elections Wales. Oh,
yeah, you broke up, Yolo. Maybe turn your video off. I think Yolo might have lost connection here.
Yes, Chair, I'll just in touch with him to see if he has lost connection. Okay, I can try to pick up what Yola probably would have covered until he joins us again. So I know he was just talking, I know that he's been to see you previously to talk about the requirements of the self-assessment under the Act. So the self-assessment will require us to draw on a number of pieces of evidence, such as the annual performance review, any external regulatory reports we receive, the annual governance statement, etc. So a number of statutory documents that we produce will need to be reviewed in order to produce that self-assessment, which will really focus on key governance areas for the authority. So we need to look at, for example, how we manage performance, our approach to risk management, financial management, safeguarding, etc., and start to form a view of the overall health of the organisation. That's what the focus of the self-assessment will be. And then, having reviewed all of those governance areas, the intention would be that we'd produce something of an action plan where we notice that there are areas for corporate improvement, and that's what will form the basis of the self-assessment, and that's covered under the corporate health outcome that you can see before you. So we will. In future, general performance monitoring will continue to be carried out at both performance scrutiny and also at Cabinet. What the ask of Governance and Audit Committee is that we take a look at that corporate health outcome part of the section of the report today, and we'd just like to seek assurance from you that you're satisfied that that the contents of that section do focus on the governance requirements that are included in the Act. We will also, in the future, as we produce quarterly performance reports, we will always add there will be a new kind of standing part of that report that will focus on corporate health. So we will continue, you know, at quarterly intervals, we will report to performance scrutiny and to Cabinet about our compliance with the or any conclusions that we can draw about our effectiveness at managing those governance areas. And then we will bring this report to you once a year for discussion and ratification. Thank you. I don't know if that's Yolo returning.
Yeah, Yolo's back, I think.
Thank you. I'm so sorry about that. It's typical that it would happen at this time. Obviously, I don't know what Nicola's covered while I was briefly absent, but
everything.
Fine. Well, as I was about to say, you'll remember that I was here in January with Gary, briefing on the LG Act, and at that time we had some uncertainty around exactly how the performance elements would work. There was the statutory guidance particularly spoke about our requirement to report against our council functions. And I think you'll recall at the time I was a bit nervous about what that actually meant, because, you know, the council is a very large organisation and we have many functions. What minutiae of detail do we need to actually go to fulfil that requirement of reporting on council functions? So anyway, as Nicola mentioned, we received independent advice through the WLGA, and the advice there was that we should report on our well-being objectives, our corporate objectives as a council. So great, we already do that. The only additionality was around the 7 governance areas. So I think one of the other things we were talking about back in January as well, that possibly the self-assessment would need to be a completely separate document to the annual performance report. But following the advice we had and recognizing that half the work is already done in the annual performance report, it made sense, therefore, to tag on this additional section, which we've titled Corporate Health, and it looks at the 7 governance areas. So it should really set the context about what is the landscape that the council is working in whilst delivering its objectives. So it covers corporate planning, financial planning, performance management, risk management, workforce planning, assets and procurement. Now those headings have been handed down to us really through the statutory guidance. Those are actually governance areas identified under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And in devising this report, we have established a measures framework which provides what SLT and lead members have seen as key performance indicators and measures in support of our corporate health, the things that we think are corporately important to keep an eye on. And then we've included a narrative around what's happened in the last year for each of those 7 areas. And they've obviously been constructed with input from lead officers who manage those areas. So for example, financial planning has been written by Steve Gadd, assets has been written by our assets manager, procurement by the procurement team, and so on. So the narrative is there as an assessment of the last year, and also trying to identify where possible any weaknesses that we feel that we can improve on. And at the very end of it all, you'll see a heading called What Are We Doing in 2021 to 2022, which falls actually on page 100. And there is a list of what we perceive as being our key actions for improvement as an authority in the year ahead. The critical thing is that the legislation requires us to bring it to corporate governance now. So it is a report that you will be seeing annually, as Nicola has said. We need to be clear, though, about the role of corporate governance versus the role of performance scrutiny, I think. Performance scrutiny is still our main committee for scrutinizing performance, and they will actually be seeing this same report tomorrow. So they will be casting their scrutinizing eye on how the council is performing. So the distinction for bringing it to corporate governance, I think, is that it is to have your opinions as to whether or not there are any glaring errors, omissions, or any ways of improving the report. It is a long report, well over 100 pages. I should say, actually, the corporate plan aspect of the report is shorter than last year's, by about 7 pages. But the additionality of this corporate health aspect has significantly bulked up the report. It does have to work very hard, though, is the thing, as a document. It has to satisfy so many pieces of legislation now. Not only are we currently still trying to satisfy the local government measure, it also seeks to address the Equality Act and our new socioeconomic duty. And now, of course, it's trying to satisfy the local government and Elections Wales Act as well as also the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. So I'll stop talking, and I'm happy to hand it over to questions.
Thank you, Joel. I've noticed, Reece and Martin, you've still got your hands up. Is that from last time?
No, Mr. Chairman, I've just put mine up.
All right, thanks, Martin. If you want to come in.
Okay. As you rightly say, it's a long report, 127 pages. I'm glad that I'm on performance as well tomorrow, because it'll give me a chance to just refresh my memory of this tonight, 127 pages. But can I just say, actually, I think it's an excellent report, because it's also a good tool for councillors to look at what's in this report and to decide whether there are any areas that we want to refer to scrutiny. And I think it's a very honest report, because I've seen things in there that I would sort of, like to see scrutinised. For example, page 52 of your report, unclassified roads to be removed from the framework. And as you all know, I have a thing about unclassified roads because I've got lots and lots of them in my ward, and I would be seriously concerned if we were taking those out of sight when it comes to repairs, potholes and things like that. So, this is an important report. I also know page 43, extra care housing in Ruthin, because of high specifications, the tender exercise was unsuccessful. What do we mean by a lower specification? So that again would be something that I would want to speak to the relevant officers about. So there is some very good stuff in here. It gives us the opportunity to pick things out and scrutinise them. And again, I've looked at the finance section. Obviously, that would interest me, and about overspends and underspends, etc. And also about finding money in the pension fund, which is interesting. But again, that would be not for you to answer in this session, but for us to perhaps pick up and ask for a clarification of that at a future meeting. I've got just two minor items. Page 34.
We've lost you, Martin. Do you want to take your video off?
It's just a minor point, but just to show that
Martin, just to stop you there.
Yeah.
We lost you after your first couple of comments.
Oh God, you didn't. I'm sorry, I didn't realise. Because can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You should have said. I was quite merrily chatting away there. I said this is an excellent report because it gives us a lot of opportunity as councillors to look at things that we may want to scrutinise.
Sorry, Martin.
Yeah. Can you not hear me still?
We caught the first half. Yeah, we caught the first half, but you were just about to start on page 34 and then you cut off.
Oh, right. Sorry. Okay, that's grand. Thank you very much. Thank God for telling me. 34, at the bottom of the page there, council tax and balances. You've got a balance of 391. I think that should be a credit balance. It's just a minor point, but if you have a look at that, if I'm very wrong, then it should have brackets around it. But there you go. And page 51, it was just an observation again here in the report that we talk about broadband, and then we have a couple of paragraphs about roads, and then we go into a great deal about superfast broadband, and perhaps those would be better if they were linked. But that's just a minor observation. But certainly from my point of view, it gives me quite a bit of information there that I think I could use to ask further questions on through scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Any other member want to come in on the report?
Do you want me to just come in quickly, Chair, on the finance bit?
Thank you, Steve. Yeah,
just no, it's because it's funding, Martin. It goes the other way around. So it's basically saying, because that's income, it's basically saying that on council tax we should have received 56.37 million, and we only received 55.9, well, almost 56 million. So it is an overspend because we've received less money than we thought we budgeted for.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for clarifying that. Thanks very much.
Members, anybody else before we move on? Reece,
Yes, I was just going to say that I thought it was a very clear report. It gives, as Martin said, a lot of information. I was going to jump in and talk about minor roads as well, but for once, Martin got the question in before me, so I look forward to scrutiny tomorrow. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Reece. If there's no other comments, oh, yes, Paul.
Thank you. It was just a couple of points. On agenda page 25, at the top, there is reference to, we are assured that this will meet the new requirement under the Act. Who gave the assurance?
That's from the independent auditor who was commissioned by the WLGA and advised us on this structure.
Okay, okay. And the second question, Chair, was there's a new corporate plan because this is the penultimate year of the current one. Will this committee be getting sight of the new corporate plan, or will that be, will the first time this committee sees it be in like 2 years' time when there's the first review? If I've got my logic right.
Gary, do you want to answer that one about the corporate plan? How we build that?
Thanks for that, Chair. Yeah. Essentially, all members will be involved in the corporate plan. Yolo and Nicola are probably best placed to speak about that, but generally what the council does, it takes a very inclusive approach to identify engagement in residents, and then of course we will want to speak to all councillors about what they consider the priorities will be for the new council going forward. And I'm sure that we will be going through a series of workshops as we have in the past before the final version of the corporate plan is approved by council. I don't think that this committee would necessarily have a formal role as a committee in that. All members would have a role clearly in shaping priorities for particularly be able to cover the vast deficiencies in my knowledge and of what the upcoming process is going to be. But effectively, that's the way we've always approached it in the past, and I'm sure it'll be something similar in the future.
Yeah, Gary, the only point I'd make is to ensure that you engage with lay members. That's all.
Chair, if I can just come in there, because we'll be managing the production of the new corporate plan, and the research phase for that is already underway, and we've got an engagement phase that actually has been launched and has been promoted. Gary's right that we've got sessions set up for the public, and also a couple of engagement sessions for both staff and also for members. And we're managing the production of the corporate plan as a project, and I can share a document outlining the timeline and the process that we have in place if the committee would like to do that. Just to give you assurance that we are reporting regularly to both SLT and Cabinet about that process as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Nicola. Am I right in saying, Nicola, that the workshops, usually it's the new council that comes in, that the workshops build on the new corporate plan?
We've got some workshops with members coming up in July time, so you should have received notification about those. But we always work with the current members, and we will look to develop some draft objectives or some proposed objectives with this cabinet and hand them over to the new council. once the new administration is formed. So we'll do a lot of work, a lot of research, engagement analysis work this side of the end of the administration, and in order to make some recommendations to the new administration. And the timetable that we're working to is that we hope to have a new corporate plan ratified by October 2022.
Thank you, Nicola. Okay, members, any other questions before we move on? If we can go to the recommendations at page 22, 3.1, it's recommended that the committee reviews and approves the draft report, considering any changes required to conclusions or actions that the council intends to take. 3.2, should the committee offer recommendations for change, the report must be amended before submission to Cabinet and Council. If a change is not adopted, the final report must explain the reason why. So are you happy with this report going forward? Yeah, show of hands. Yeah, Nicola, Yolo, it's a full show of hands. And thank you for the report. It did take some reading, but I think you've covered everything within that. So thank you very much. Okay, members, moving on then to agenda number 9, which is the annual government statement 2021, pages 151 to 180. And this is led by Lisa Lovegrove, our Head of Audit, Internal Audit. Lisa.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is the annual governance statement. So it's a culmination of all the activity from internal audit, but also wider than that, external regulator reports, and also an internal self-assessment by a corporate governance working group, which reviews the governance arrangements within the council. So the council has a statutory duty to publish an annual governance statement, and it forms part of the statement of accounts. So it will be published as part of the statement of accounts. It's presented here separately, so you've got an opportunity to consider it separately and give it the sufficient consideration that it merits. The annual governance statement, the assessment this year, obviously the impact of COVID-19 had a significant impact on governance arrangements at the start of the financial year due to social distancing requirements. It meant that many committee meetings couldn't be held, and so this annual governance statement attempts to reflect that. Also impacts from leaving the European Union. Some of that we haven't been able to appreciate yet, but there are certain changes on the horizon that we need to monitor. So there's a comment on that in the annual governance statement as well. And this year, there's a statement on compliance with the Financial Management Code, which is a new requirement. So if I just briefly go through the appendix to that report, bear with me as I'm scrolling down. It initially begins with the governance framework, and that sets out the principles from A to G, which is a requirement of SIP for Solace, and they've set out these principles and underlying requirements which demonstrate good governance. So there's a very brief summary of the arrangements in place within Denbighshire against each of those principles, and that's been updated to reflect where COVID-19 has had an impact on our arrangements as well. So I won't go through those, but just to explain what they are. And then on page, where are we? Page 163 of your packs, here's where it begins on the COVID-19 impact on governance. it's had a significant impact, as I'm sure you're aware from other reports and communications. But in the annual governance statement last year, if you recall, there was a significant governance issue raised due to the fact that governance committee meetings, democratic meetings, couldn't be held at the start of the year. So there's an update as part of this annual governance statement as those governance arrangements could come back online. So they were held virtually starting from September 2020, and then simultaneous translations commenced from January 2021 as soon as the capabilities, IT capabilities, allowed that. And so now all council committee meetings and governance and audit committee meetings are webcast, so they're more transparent and open than ever before. So that's a positive arising from the pandemic. During the interim period between April and September, there were alternative arrangements put in place to maintain governance and some transparency over the decision-making processes. So that's just summarised in there as well. On page 165, there's a bullet in terms of the council's response to the pandemic, which I won't go through, but that's just tip of the iceberg, I think, in terms of what was affected. But those are the key bits in relation to governance. And then moving on to page 166, the impact of the Brexit or EU exit on governance. To some extent, it's been masked in terms of the Brexit impact because of the pandemic, but there will be a host of EU rules and laws that will be converted to UK law. So in terms of this committee and the annual governance statement, it's bearing in mind rules such as procurement law and how that's going to be adapted to UK law will be monitored. Then if I pick up on page 169, the review of effectiveness, I think this is the key bit of the annual governance statement for you to pay attention to. This year is the first year that the council's had a group accounts. So this annual governance statement also encompasses the governance arrangements with Denbighshire Leisure Limited. So just to make that clear. As I mentioned previously, the Corporate Governance Officers Group has done a self-assessment and confirmed that arrangements such as the Code of Conduct, financial regulations and other corporate processes have continued to operate as intended. There were some instances of non-compliance as internal audit have picked up. The previous item, the annual performance report that Yolo and Nicola just presented, is a really useful document for this annual governance statement. So I haven't had to repeat the information that they've presented, but it's a really key document in terms of the assessments that they've carried out, and that's been incorporated as part of this statement. There's also the internal audit annual opinion, which is the next agenda item. So I just summarised there the overall opinion. Again, that's a key assurance statement that feeds into the annual governance statement. And on page 170, I've just listed the low assurance reports that were presented to committee during the year and the actions agreed to address those low assurance reports. On page 171, this is the Financial Management Code, which is a new requirement to be included in the annual governance statement. So Steve Gadd coordinated that review as part of the self-assessment, and there's a statement from him in there just confirming that Denbighshire is compliant with the code in a majority of areas, and some improvements has been identified, and those are bulleted on the bottom of page 171 of your packs. This year, this is a new table, the key indicators. So that's on page 172. just to give some indicators of performance. So you've got statutory reports, number of proven frauds, number of ombudsman referrals. So hopefully just in the short table there, I think demonstrate that there isn't any areas of significant concerns. Then the assurances from external regulators, just briefly summarised the work of Audit Wales and the reports that they've presented to committee during the year, and Estyn and Care Inspectorate Wales as well. I think their work has been impacted by COVID-19, but the work that has taken place has been summarised in those bullet points at the bottom of page 173. Right then, so page 174. So that's the action taken in response to last year's annual governance statement, and all have made good progress. I think a majority have been completed as indicated in that progress to date column, and a couple have been carried forward to this year's annual governance statement as improvement actions. So if I move on to this year's improvement actions, I think this is a really important part of the annual governance statement, demonstrates that we've been transparent about where there's areas for improvement. And so those are listed, such as a review of the officer's code of conduct. You've got the continuing budget pressures and the action the finance team are taking to ensure the governance of the financial arrangements. I won't pick up on all the points raised here, but a key one for this committee is the requirements of the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021. So a number of key actions required in response to that, which are already underway. Another one is around workforce capacity and resilience. There's a number of key positions that are vacant, such as the Chief Executive and the Head of Education and Children's Services. So just capturing that in there, but the wider workforce planning as well, where a number of services have been put under additional strain due to the pandemic. So just the arrangements in place to monitor and manage that as well. And last on that table is funding arrangements following EU exit. So there's a number of new funding streams coming on board now, and the need to develop governance arrangements around those, such as the UK Levelling Up Fund and the Community Renewal Fund. So that is the annual governance statement in a nutshell. It will require, if there's any comments from yourselves, it's at draft stage at the moment, so that can be incorporated into the annual governance statement, and it will be finalised alongside the statement of accounts when that comes to the committee. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions, members? I've got a few hands up here. Martin?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I think this time my hand was left.
Okay, thank you. Gary Williams wanted to come in.
Thank you. Apologies to Lisa, because I should have picked this up when she sent me the report. When I read it, I didn't pick it up, but it's been pointed out to me. Whilst we didn't have our full hybrid system up and running until sort of Christmas time for meetings, we did have some translation facilities available. We started using Zoom in October, so we were able to provide some simultaneous translation to then, but it's just the fully formed system wasn't ready till sort of December time and January, but we did have some translation going on in October.
All of a sudden I'm descending in this room because they needed another room. That's fine. Just need to check them on me.
Okay, thanks, Gary. I'll make a note of that in the annual governance statements and reflect it.
Thank you, Gary. Welcome, Joe. I just see you've come in, Joseph Welch. Moving on then, Matthew Edwards, just to let the two new members know, Matthew, as well as Dave Wilson, is from Audit Wales. So, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks thanks for that introduction, and morning members, especially the 2 new members as well. Lovely to see you this morning. It's only just to follow up on Lisa's comments, really, that she mentioned that the annual governance statement now will form the basis of the financial statements, which we're due to receive shortly. Just to assure that those new members in particular, really, I'm sure the other members are familiar with the process, is that we will be reviewing the annual governance statement for 2 purposes, which will form the basis of our auditor's report on those accounts. Firstly, to satisfy ourselves that what's in there complies with what SIP for Solace require and the guidance that they issue, and also that it's not inconsistent with our understanding of the council. So we will report back to the committee in September on those findings as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Matthew. Any other questions, members? Gary, you still got your hand up, or is that another one?
Technical incompetence, Chair. I'll take it.
Thanks, Gary. No other questions, members? Well, thank you, Lisa, again for this report. Very thorough report. And considering what we've gone through this year with COVID, it must have been quite a hard report to put together, actually. So moving to the recommendations, members, the committee reviews and approves the draft and annual governance statement for 2020-21 and monitors the progress made on the action plan from 2019 to 20. As we need to approve this, do I need a seconder for approve and a seconder?
Yes,
yeah, can I have somebody approve? Thank you, Martin. Seconded by Paul. Thanks very much.
And can you just confirm, Chair, that there's nobody against?
Yeah, could I just ask all members, is anybody against? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gary. Moving on then, members, to agenda item number 10. Internal audit.
Chairman, just a quick
sorry. Go on, Martin.
Just a quick observation. I think I'm repeating myself now, but there must be something wrong. Leave it. There's a technical problem. When everybody starts to speak, there is an element of silence. You come in very quietly. So whether we need to... Don't.
Silence now, Martin. You've gone off completely.
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah. Okay, Martin. Yeah. We'll have a look at it at this end now. Moving on then to agenda item number 10, Internal Audit Report 2020-21, which is pages 181 to 210.
Yeah, it's frozen for me as well.
To consider report by the... How do I do that on me?
Just on your laptop.
Can you hear me now, members? Yeah, there's a problem in the chamber with the microphone, so I've switched over to my computer. Thank you, Martin. As I say, moving on to the Internal Audit Report, pages 181 to 210, to consider a report by the Chief Internal Auditor on the adequacy and effectiveness of the Council's framework of governance, risk and control during the year that informed the annual governance statement. And I think this is Lisa again.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The recommendation to the Governance and Audit Committee.
Lisa, you're breaking up badly.
Am I? Okay, I'll turn my camera.
Okay.
Hopefully that's better.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so the this is a key document and feeds into the annual governance statements that we've just discussed. In terms of this year's internal audit annual report, obviously it's been an exceptional year, and the impact on the internal audit team has been reflected in this report, such as the impact on resources, particularly at the start of the financial year, where a number of auditors were redeployed to assist services directly in the response to the pandemic. And as I've mentioned previously, one member of the team is still redeployed or on secondment with a track and trace team. Despite that, sufficient work was carried out during the year. This has included audits that are at draft stage, so was sufficiently advanced, so we're able to provide an opinion based on those items of work as well. One of those was Denbighshire Leisure and the governance arrangements with them, so it's a key report that we have been able to consider as part of this annual report. So if I take you to the appendix and just pick out some key bits from the internal audit annual report itself. Just scrolling down. So on the top of page 189, internal audit opinion 2020-21, there's a bullet. Oh, there's a bullet point there just to demonstrate what this opinion is based on. But this year's opinion to consider a number of key factors, which I've already alluded to, in terms of the disruption to the internal audit plan, but also as we maintain a flexible audit plan, we're able to refocus the plan on areas of greatest priority. So we're not just delivering audits that we decided you know, at the start of the year before the pandemic and carrying on with that. We were able to flex to where there were immediate requirements for our work, and some of that to advisory work to support services such as the business rates grants, free school meals, direct payments, and so on. So my opinion is largely based on the completion of the work that we were able to deliver, which is listed in Appendix 1. There was one audit during the year that received a low assurance, and all the others were awarded a high or medium assurance. And where there were significant issues identified, overall, they were appropriately addressed. So it confirms that management continues to be responsive to our work. So in reaching my opinion, I've considered the balance of the results of our work against the environment that we're auditing, and concluded that major risk issues and low assurance opinions were not significant in aggregate to the system of internal control. Just to caveat that internal audit hasn't reviewed all risks and assurance relating to Denbighshire County Council, so I can't provide absolute assurance. So it's very much based on the work that we've carried out, which is listed throughout the rest of the report. So in terms of the summary of our audit work, so that's on page 191, I just draw your attention to the table there, which provides a summary of the number of different assurance rating reports that we've provided. And as you can see, for 2020-21, the number is less than in previous years. But not too far off what was delivered in 2016-17. So I'm not sure the reason for that. There are considerations in there that certain low assurance reports can take longer. So but that wasn't the case then. But just to point out that in last year's internal audit opinion, there were 3 low assurance reports that were at draft stage, and they were reported to Governance and Audit Committee during this financial year. So the table, those 3 low assurance reports would be captured in the 2019-20 results. Also to note that the audit strategy for 2020-21 listed 13 audits which were either cancelled or deferred to 2021-22, so this financial year. So that they're shown in Appendix 1. So that was due to the reduced capacity of the internal audit team. but also a change in focus where we prioritise other work. And also audits have been taking longer to carry out due to having to work remotely and the pressures that certain services were under. Then just to mention on page 192 around any restrictions on our scope of work, which we have to report. Other than the lockdown since March 2020, there was no impairment or restrictions on our work. And we've adjusted well to working remotely. It was something that we were doing to some extent before the pandemic. There have been instances where we haven't been able to carry out site visits, such as community living schemes as one example where we would normally visit the properties to confirm like financial arrangements and things like that are in place. Page 193 is, so this is like the annual counter fraud report as well, is captured within our annual report. So there's a summary of counter fraud work. So just to point out that the responsibility for managing the risk of fraud lies with management, but internal audit is involved in terms of evaluating the risk of fraud and the manner that it's managed. We also coordinate the National Fraud Initiative, which is what Lisa Jones was referring to earlier around the data matching exercise between local authorities. There's also HMRC, DWP, information that's fed in there as well. So this table there shows the NFI results over the last few exercises. The current exercise 2020-21 is underway. The data was released in January, and we've already identified a number of results there, with £42,000 in the region of that identified already this year, but that work is ongoing. In terms of irregularities, internal audit have been informed of 4 allegations during the financial year. So there's a summary on page 194 listing the outcome of those investigations. And then other counter fraud activity, we're updating the strategy for the prevention and detection of fraud and fraud response plan, and that will come to the committee for its next meeting. But also to point out that Audit Wales carried out a review of local government's fraud arrangements and Denbighshire's local arrangements as well. And the latter concluded that the council had good arrangements in place and recommended some areas for improvement. So that's just summarised there. I'll just scan down then to internal audit performance. So you can see the table on page 197. And where I think the key one that has been impacted during the year is the implementation of agreed actions, which was in the 60% region at the start of the year and throughout the year. By the end of this financial year, that has improved and just short of our target, standing at 72% of actions agreed. We've also circulated a customer satisfaction survey to those officers that were in receipt of internal audit reviews to gain some feedback on our work. So the results of that is summarised on page 198, and positive overall. Obviously, where there are areas for improvement, we are taking that into consideration. And then finally on page 199, it's conformance with the public sector internal audit standards. The accounts and audit Wales requires the council to perform an annual review of the effectiveness of the internal audit function. So that's comprised of a self-assessment, and then every 5 years there's an external assessment, and the Welsh Chief Auditors Group coordinates peer review. Gwynedd County Council carried out our last review in 2018, and our next review is scheduled for 2022-23, and they've agreed that Ceredigion County Council will perform that external assessment. But the results of my self-assessment, there are some improvement actions, and they're bulleted on page 200. I won't go through the appendices, but because I've referred to them previously, but I take it that you've had an opportunity to read the report. If there's any comments or questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Okay, Lisa, thank you. Am I on now? Yeah. Am I coming across okay now? Thanks, members. Any questions, members? No? You all see?
Yeah.
Yes, go on, Rhys.
Yeah.
I noticed this interesting term on page 193 of agile auditing. Could you just explain briefly in layman's terms what's the difference between auditing and agile auditing, please, Lisa?
Yes, it's not hugely different. Agile is a concept, I think, that was taken from ICT, where it's an agile approach to carrying out a piece of work. In terms of auditing, agile auditing, what it means is that we set out a plan of what we will audit, and we will review our progress and what we've covered at intervals. So we meet after assess what I've covered. Have we done enough to place assurance on what we've looked at, or do we need to carry out further work? And there's also more communication with the people that we're auditing as well, just to make them aware of where we're up to and what we've got left to do. So it should help to reduce the amount of time that we're auditing and making sure that we're focusing on key areas and not being bogged down by some of the minutiae.
Okay. Thank you. Can I also ask you about page 203, the audits cancelled or deferred, please? I think we're all aware of the pressure everybody has been under, and it's quite surprising that so many audits have been accomplished under the circumstances. But will the audits cancelled or deferred, do they get priority over other audits that would normally take place in the year 21-22, or is it a plan to do the normal ones plus the ones that have been deferred? I think what I'm really asking is who sets the priority for those, Lisa?
Yeah, that's my assessment. I've got a vast spreadsheet called the Audit Needs Analysis, and that has input from a variety of sources, mainly the corporate priorities and the corporate risk register, but also service risk registers. So if they change, I update that fairly regularly during the year, and we will focus on the highest priority areas based on a calculation within that audit needs assessment. So they will still be covered, but they might not necessarily be prioritised as top of the list just because they were in the plan last year, as there might be other emerging areas which are a higher priority.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rhys. Martin, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. It sounds as I'm echoing, so apologies. I'm hoping that you're only hearing one of me, not two. Yeah. We're seriously having problems this morning because most people are very quiet when they're speaking initially, and we don't hear you, and then you come in later. Are you hearing me now? Yeah, okay. And Lisa, just to say, I think you had somebody cross-lined when you were giving your report, because there was some other voice in the background which was breaking through every now and again. I think that's what you had. So we've had a few gremlins this morning, Mr. Chairman. Sorry about that. Can I just ask Lisa, in relation to page 193 in the report, the one that really stands out there is the council tax single persons discount, and the fact that last year we looked as if we overpaid by 665,000. That's what we found, and then this year, of course, we're down to 811. How do we monitor that? Because obviously, you know, for some years I had single person council tax, and then when my mother arrived here from the States, the first thing I did was contact the council tax department to say, by the way, I'm no longer entitled to this because there are two of us living here. But it seems to me that obviously we had a purge there in 2018 and 19, and recovered or identified overpayments of 665,000. How do we know how we've gone on with that, and have we got most of that money back now? Because if we've identified it, we've obviously made actions to recover it. And is this an ongoing exercise? And how do we ensure that you know, we don't have this sort of situation again in the future? Because that's quite a lot of income there.
Okay, trying to explain the National Fraud Initiative, the data matching, that is based on information that we upload. So the council uploads data from the elections in terms of, and also the council tax, and so there's a direct match between the two. So previous to 2018-19, I believe that Civico do the revs and bends, revenues and benefits, sorry for abbreviating. They coordinated their own exercise and were not using NFI quite so heavily. But there was also in 2018-19, what might need to be considered is a greater turnout for elections, which might have provided a greater quality of information. But the Civica had made a direct, made a conscious decision to really focus on the matches, and where they have identified people like sofa surfing, that type of thing. So there's a greater display of that happening. They have amended the council tax bills for those properties, so should be recovering in that way. In terms of 2020-21, it's very much an early stage of this exercise, so I anticipate that figure will increase as the revenues and benefits team have an opportunity to go through the matches.
Thank you for clarifying that. So it's all about using this matching system, which actually I think you did mention earlier when I raised it under one of the other items on the agenda. I think the key to this is that we make sure that we are using it continually to, you know, reduce the amount of single payments that we're, you know, or single residencies that we're dealing with on this. Thank you very much. I think that was the only item I really wanted to raise. Because the only other one was 203. We've kept the empty homes policy. That's a corporate priority, but I think we're putting it a little on the back burner, are we?
Yeah, the indication in the project register against empty homes is showing as green. So if we do pick it up, it will be as part of our project management assurance work. So it's not necessarily off the cards, but not a priority as a separate audit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Martin. Any other members want to comment before we move on? No? You all happy? Thank you again, Lisa, for the report. If we move to the recommendation, I'm sorry about my voice, by the way. I haven't been shouting, honestly. The committee considers and comments on the Chief Internal Auditor's annual report and overall opinion. Are you happy you've done that, members? Thank you. Moving on then to agenda item number 11, which is direct payments for children, internal audit follow-up report, pages 211 to 224. Let me... Yeah, and I think Rhiann's with us, Rhiann Morrow, and James Woods, yeah? Is it Rhiann?
Borodar, good morning. Yes, Rhiann Morell's here. James Wood is not joining us today, I'm afraid.
Okay, thanks, Rhiann. Are you taking us through the report, Rhiann?
Could I make a start and then I'll...
Yeah, okay, Lisa, thank you.
We've also got Lisa Hart that's joined the meeting as well. If there's any questions, as she oversaw the follow-up audit. Okay, just bear with me. So the reason for this report is that the direct payments for children's audit was carried out and reported in November 2020, presented to this committee in November as well of that year. We gave it a low assurance, and so the committee requested that a progress report come back to the committee at a later stage, which is this report. So the original follow-up was scheduled for April 2021, but due to the pandemic, we're using that anyway. No, only joking. No, due to the pandemic, we were unable to carry out the work. We were prioritising a lot of the assurance work that we were doing, but it has come here now, and I think the children's services were also under some pressure due to the pandemic as well. So for both reasons. Due to the work that we've carried out, we were able to reassess the assurance rating that we provided just based on the action plan and results of the actions that have been implemented. We were able to give it a medium assurance rating. So we have got another follow-up, second follow-up scheduled for September 2021 to pick up on any outstanding actions. If I just see, Lisa, did you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, I was just going to explain about the direct payments, really, that it was a key principle of the Social Services and Wellbeing Act to ensure that people have a say over their outcomes and shape the support that they need. So the direct payment is an option that's considered for providing care and support, focusing on achieving outcomes. And this payment can be made to the child's parent or carer or into a managed account with a third-party provider to administer funds. And as Lisa sort of said, our follow-up review found that out of the 14 actions, there was just 4 that have not been fully completed, hence why obviously we've increased our assurance rating to medium. I'm happy to take questions, and as we've explained, obviously Rhiann's here as well, and I think Councillor Hugh Hilditch Roberts is here as well as lead member.
Thank you, Lisa. Martin, you've got your hand up.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I think I left it up, but apologies about that. But actually, I did have a question. 5.2 in the report. We tried to contact All Wales Direct Payment Foreman to gain an understanding of the Welsh Authority monitoring process with regards to DBS, etc. And it says on the complete side that authority's monitoring process, however, could not provide more insight. So we drew a blank there with the forum on that information. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it was in relation to the personal assistance process. So we were trying to get a bit more clarity as to what other local authorities do, and they were having sort of similar issues to ourselves about the sort of the level of monitoring that needs to be undertaken. So really, we didn't really get much clarity from pursuing it through that forum.
Martin, if I may,
yeah,
I raised this last time, You know, we as an authority cannot be asking parents to provide a DBS when making payments to them. And you know, they're parents, they are carers. So you know, the fact that this has to be a process when they are family, it doesn't make sense to me. So because you know, if we had an issue about their care, we wouldn't allow the children in their care, would we? So I think, again, I've said it before. This seems to be an area that we're making a mountain out molehill, and that just proves that other authorities have the same issue, because we are making payments to families.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Hugh. Martin, any other members want to comment? Yes, Rhys.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't on this committee when the request for this report came in, so I know nothing of the background of it at all. One of my concerns, coming from a totally different direction, is there a risk that the process is made so difficult that young people and families that are in real need of these payments don't receive them? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm coming from, is that you know, some of these families, it's a quite a casual payment sometimes, just in a time of need, and we're not talking massive numbers, are we, Rhian? I forget what the numbers are off the top of my head now, but I'm sure Rhian will reassure me. And you know, I've been in the
about
box
39, Hugh.
So, how many? Sorry.
39.
Yeah, 39 is what we're talking about. And just, Rhian, give examples of what these payments are made for, just to help Rhys, really, if you can.
So following an assessment of needs, they can be for all sorts of things. So some are used for personal assistance to help families take children out on days out, or to access you know, swimming or trampolining or those sorts of activities for children. Some are just to give some respite so families can deal with the other children in the household. Some are for nursery provision, some are for assistance with, you know, household cleaning, that sort of thing. It's really what the assessed need is for each family. So some it's only a couple of hours a week, and it might range up to 13 hours a week. It depends really on the need of the child. And obviously they could be stopped and started at any time as those needs change, and we review the needs. Or indeed, you know, during the pandemic, we had lots of activities stop, so some direct payments stopped because activities weren't being accessed. So it's a range of things, but it is anything to support that family for meeting that child's desired outcomes.
Oh, okay, thank you, Rhian, and thank you, Hugh. I think that puts it into context for me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rhys. Any other members before we move on? No? Well, Lisa has mentioned that there will be a follow-up report.
I appreciate, you know, the comments in terms of proportionality. I just wanted to explain that this audit, a separate audit of direct payments for children, was done because we were covering direct payments for adults, and because we were taking a report, just obviously the point being made that there were 39 direct payments for children. We picked up the area of direct payments because it is an area vulnerable to fraud, and so the, you know, paying to recipients of council money will need to demonstrate that that their outcomes are being met, but also that there is a requirement for the council to support people who are in receipt of direct payments to ensure that they are able to adequately engage PAs, and that they are aware of what their responsibilities are to manage risks. So that is where the audit is coming from. It's not to try and put too much bureaucracy in the way of these payments. It's just to manage some risks, and we bear in mind that they need to be proportionate with that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lisa. there are families out there in need of this, but then there is risks there as well, using residents' money, in other words. So moving on to and as you say, there will be another report coming September 2021. The recommendation that the committee reviews progress with addressing the audit actions and decides whether it requires any further update reports on progress with the improvement action plan. And as Lisa's mentioned, we will get that September. Yeah, pardon?
It's up to the committee whether internal audit will carry out the follow-up review as standard, as there are actions outstanding, but it's up to the committee to decide whether it needs to see that report or whether it's satisfied that internal audit will pick up on any outstanding actions.
Members, over to you. Are you happy for the audit to pick up any outstanding item, or would you like to see the report after September? Looking for guidance. Yes, Paul.
Chair, I'm happy that it progresses in the normal way with a follow-up with Lisa, and bearing in mind the comments, I personally don't feel a need to have a further report to this committee.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul. Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Lisa, leave it at that.
Okay, thank you.
You'd be happy to know number 12 is the last one. The forward work programme, which is pages 225 and 226. And looking at July.
Sorry, Chair, just to confirm, I think Steph sent round an updated forward work programme by email to the committee, because the inadvertently the forward work programme that was attached to the papers was slightly out of date, and a more up-to-date version was circulated by email to the committee, I think yesterday.
Yeah,
Yes.
An email from Stephanie Jones. Yeah.
Thanks, Gary. Yes, you've all had that, yeah? Lisa, anything on the forward work programme then? For
Yeah, from ourselves, there's the Queen's Buildings follow-up report. Doesn't seem to have been listed. I think that was due to come in July. If there's room for it there, otherwise September.
on a personal note, I'd like to see it in July if it could be fitted in.
Yeah, we have recently carried out the follow-up, so it is ready to come. So.
And anything else? What I wanted to mention, I received a letter from Audit Wales as chair of the committee, and I believe all of the council chairs have also received this letter. I did send it out to members so you could view the letter before today's meeting. And just to pick on the third paragraph, we found that council's approaches excuse me, to dealing with our performance audit reports, proposals for improvement and local government studies, recommendations are variable. Council's approaches vary from regular reviews and audit trackers and action plans to reports and recommendations, only being seen when we present our annual audit summary. We are therefore not assured that all councils are consistently actively considering the findings of our reports. Given the role of the Governance Audit Committee to review and assess the risk management, internal control, performance management and corporate governance arrangements of the council, we'd expect that all councils, governance and audit committees formally consider all reports of external review bodies, principally Audit Wales, Estin and Care Inspectorate Wales. I think, and what's coming out of this, that there will, and Dave may be able to put me right here, there'll be a quarterly report coming out, and obviously we need to fit that within our forward work programmes. Could you comment on it, Dave?
Yeah, certainly I will do, yes. The letter raises concerns really across all of Wales, and as the letter says, different councils deal with our reports in different ways. What we would expect is that when we issue a national report or a value for money report, that somebody within the council, one of the managers within the council, reviews that report and identifies whether there are any local issues for the council to consider. So that's the focus of the letter, is just to prompt councils to say, we do issue reports, and there may be within those reports some issues that you need to take account of. There may be some reports that you will read and say, well, actually, it doesn't apply to us. There's nothing in there that is an issue for us. So we're not talking about wasting audit committee, governance and audit committee time. It's just that if there are issues within reports, then they do need to be raised with the council. Now, in terms of the quarterly update, it is something that Lisa and I have spoken about previously. Lisa provides an update on the internal audit reports regularly to the audit committee, and this is, I suppose, Audit Wales catching up in a way, because what we're going to do is we're going to produce a quarterly update, which will have the national reports within there, the local government, relevant to local government within there. So it'll raise those with you to make sure that you're aware of those and what the focus of those reports are. And we'll also provide an update on the progress that we have with our annual audit plan, in delivering the annual audit plan. So you should see it hopefully as a positive. Going forward, there may still be things that we highlight within there as for reports that cover value for money. That officers may say, well, actually, you need to know more about this. So therefore, there may still be a reason for more fuller reports coming through from officers. But that's what the letter is intended to do. It's to raise the profile of the wider work, because you are good in terms of giving us airtime for our local reports, but the practice varies across the country, and the intention is just to raise the profile of it.
Thanks very much for that, Dave.
Okay.
Gary, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, it was just really to confirm that the terms of reference of the committee state that all external regulatory reports should come to corporate governance, and I think we do try and do that. Clearly, as David has said, you know, you may very well find that a quarterly report from Audit Wales would be very useful for you to sort of keep track of what's going on through external audit, and means that you're expecting some of these other reports almost before you get them, if that makes sense.
And Chair, it helps you to know the progress that we're actually making, because you know there's a lot of work goes on between the audit plan being produced and you actually seeing the report. So you may just need that assurance that we are actually working on the as planned, and that we will deliver. So hopefully it'll be positive. There's a template being put together within Audit Wales. And I'm told that will be available for the second quarter. So maybe around about September time, we can look forward to providing our first quarterly update.
Thanks very much, David.
Chair, can I suggest then that we pencil that into the forward work programme, not to put any pressure on Audit Wales, but that so that we know we've got space for it. Yeah. In September, and then if for some reason the template isn't available, we can always push it back through the programme.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Gary. Can we do that, Lisa? Yeah, September.
Yeah, I think Frodry on the call should be able to take account of that.
Smashing. Anything else? No.
On the back of the annual governance statement is usually a progress update on the improvement plan. So that should come either November or January, but we could put a placeholder in November.
Yeah,
for that.
If we can do that, yeah. Members, anything for the forward programme from yourselves? Any other comments before we close the meeting? No? Well, I hope the 2 new members have enjoyed the meeting. We have finished a little early. The last meeting I had my pyjamas on. But and thank you to the 2 gentlemen, David, Matthew from Audit Wales, and have a good day. The sun's out, and I'll see you at the next meeting. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.